So this whole time you were away, and I've been texting you like, hey, you should see Argo. Hey, you should see Skyfall. Hey, you should see whatever. Most of the time, I understand that you've been too busy to do anything. So why don't you fill us in on what exactly you have been doing?
Yes, well, not just the past 2 months. I've been doing this for a while, but the past 2 months or so has been the sort of highest intensity level of it. Um, since September of 2011, I've been the data director for the Obama campaign in Virginia. Um, and I'll talk about why that's actually not true when we talk when we dig into this. That's actually papering over exactly what I did.
I knew it.
Right. I'm not a secret agent. Although I worked with people who I would not be surprised if they were in the CIA because they were able to make shit happen. It was incredible. So I basically was I was responsible for all the campaign data in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I
Now,
managed to.
Virginia, was that a contentious state at all?
Is that a battleground state of any flavor? It was, yeah. It was for especially for our, for any listeners abroad. Uh, well, maybe we should just back up.
Let's
Especially
just
for them.
explain the entire electoral process.
Well, I'm not going to do that, but there are some great CGP grade videos that you can watch if you want to get into the whole electoral process. But presidential elections are contested state by state, and each state has a number of electoral votes based on the size of the state, the population of the state. And if you get a majority of the popular vote in a state, you get all of those electoral votes. That's not true everywhere. In Maine and Nebraska, they have a different way of doing it, but that's mostly how it works. So Barack Obama and Mitt Romney were vying and contesting for the presidential for the White House to be president, and there were a number of battleground states where the campaigns were really fighting it out to win. So Shawn and I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about the campaign, kind of like Five Things podcast style or SCHP style. Thinking about kind of almost like the business side of it or the process side of it. And obviously we were a very successful campaign. There have been many successful campaigns. There will be more successful campaigns. But there's some interesting things that I think that we can talk about or learn from my experience.
I think we're at a point in history where this kind of analysis of data is more easily available than it ever has been before and will be more important than it has ever been.
Definitely. So before we get into this, I think we should probably put like a little disclaimer on this. This is not a political podcast. There are great political podcasts out there, I'm sure. I don't listen to them because I don't like listening to things that are about my work. Um, and specifically, this is not a partisan podcast of any sort. So we are going to talk about the Obama campaign because I was on it, but that in no way is to prejudice Mitt Romney or Republicans or Democrats for that matter. This is a discussion about like the mechanics of campaigns, so it could be any campaign. Um, so specifically what I want to say is don't even think about posting a partisan comment on this video. It will just get deleted.
It will be swiftly deleted.
Yeah, don't even think about it. No one cares to talk about that. If you have insights or thoughts about the stuff we talk about, that's fine, but we're not gonna stand still for anyone disparaging or unduly praising one side or the other, because that's not what this is about.
Yeah, the more the older that I've gotten and the more that I've seen of the way that companies and businesses operate, and we've talked about them to no end on this podcast or the previous one, which is basically the same podcast. I've come to see that like the business of America is the business of America. Like it's got a CEO and chairman of the board, and it's just it's a different kind of thing, but it's still the same kind of thing because we seem to only know how to operate our decision process in basically one way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising that humans have found sort of efficient ways of coming to, making decisions and executing.
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't at all be surprising, and it also shouldn't be surprising that some organizations are better at that and some are worse. And one way to
China.
look right, one way to look at that is how they're structured organizationally. You can also look at their culture and their values and all sorts of stuff like that. Um, and the Obama campaign was no different. It was a big organization, huge organization, spent $1 billion, and it did really, really big things, really kind of, amazing big tasks in a very short time span with very little margin for error.
Some people might say not short enough.
Yeah, so I didn't watch TV, and one thing I'm not going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about paid media because I was not at all involved in our paid media stuff. But there was a 60-minute news window in Ohio where I believe this was the first time ever, literally every single ad was a political advertisement of some sort. There was not one non-political ad.
This news broadcast brought to you half by the Republican Party and half by the Democratic Party.
Right, exactly. Or, 20% by the Democratic Party, 20% by the Republican Party, and 60% by outside spending groups.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about how like a big national campaign is structured, because that's interesting, I think, especially if you're like an organizational wonk or a process wonk. It's sort of, there are some things that are put in place to like help us make decisions and help us be nimble, and there are some things that are there because of the law, and you have to do things a certain way. So it's just like corporate structure. There are some things that you have to do because that's the law, that's the rule. You have to do it this way. And there are other things that you have some choices on. So when I said I was the data director for the Obama campaign, that's not technically true. I was the data director for an organization called Organizing for America Virginia.
Right.
We were basically a franchise of the campaign. You that way.
So you're the KFC.
Right. We are we are the Obama campaign in Virginia, basically. So the way that Democrats structure national campaigns, Republicans do this very similarly, but since I've never worked on a Republican campaign, I'm not sure that this is exactly the same. I don't want to speak out of turn. We have a national campaign, and then we have state versions of those campaigns that are run out of the state party in every state that we actually contest in. So in 2008, there was Obama for America, and that was, an organization based in Chicago. And then there was the Campaign for Change in Ohio, Virginia, in Pennsylvania, in Florida, wherever. The reason why we do that is for campaign finance purposes. Basically all the staff in state was on the state party payroll, and the national party and the national campaign are able to transfer money to the state parties. They can transfer as much money as they want, basically. So what
$1 billion?
$1 billion, yeah. The national campaign, actually, there are three different things that raised money. There was Obama for America, there was the Democratic National Committee, and then something called the Obama Victory Fund, which is like a collaboration between the two of them. Campaign finance is bananas, by the way. I don't even want to get into it.
It sounds a little bananas.
It's bananas. So they raise money, they spend money on national things like advertisement. That's a big thing that we spend money on, and polling and our national analytics. And then they transfer money down to states, and we spend that money in the state on like staff and stuff. So really what really what the state campaign is what we call a field operation. It is the
back to the CIA again.
Right. It's the boots on the ground, really. So in Virginia, we had our state director, who's basically like the campaign manager, some more senior leadership, and then we have a whole bunch of departments. Uh, and we had our own communications and press department, but in state, they do very different work from like the national communications and press shops. Like the national communications people are like shaping the national news narrative and like being on talk shows and on cable news and all that stuff. In state, really what our communications guys do are two things. One, they highlight the field program so that people know like the Obama campaign has a field program. And they're doing these things in like in your community. And they do what's called bracketing. Bracketing is making sure that if the other side is in state, that we have someone there who can speak on behalf of the campaign and make sure that we're in the story too, so that they don't get like the story all to themselves.
Okay.
So that's like the purpose of the press shop.
Why in
but
the world
like,
is that called bracketing?
um, when the opponent comes in to state, uh, the bracketing happens before and after it.
Oh, so it's making a bracket.
So it's on either side of it.
Gotcha. I knew you would have an explanation for that somehow.
Yeah. So no, I have an explanation. But that's like one area where like the in-state campaign is very different from the national campaign, and it's set up that way so that we can so that every level of the organization can be as efficient as possible. Because if the national campaign had to worry about highlighting the stories of all these volunteers on the ground, it's like they'd have to have like hundreds of people in Chicago, and like it would be a mess. And if the in-state campaign had to worry about like making sure that we were on some sort of national message with, you know, CNN and MSNBC, it would be like, oh, all these different campaigns would, you know, in these different states, they would all maybe have slightly different messages, and it wouldn't be coordinated, and you wouldn't be saying the same thing at the same time. So, you know, there's sort of like a division of labor, so that, you know, one team can specialize on one thing and one team can specialize on another thing. The like core of our program though was this, you know, this field program, and that's what I kind of want to talk about. I want to talk about a project that we executed, and it's called GOTV, or Get Out the Vote. The Republican version of this is called the 72-hour program. It's basically what you do leading up to Election Day and on Election Day to make sure that everyone who's going to vote for your candidate votes. And I may contrast this with some things from the Romney campaign that people might have heard about, which, you know, highlight some sort of, you know, potential organizational dysfunctionality that maybe made their, you know, GOTV program not as successful as, you know, as ours was, or as that like sort of an ideal GOTV program would be.
And
so
hopefully will be in 2016, according to them.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully they're, you know, well, I have a dog in all those fights, but, you know, should learn. Humanity should learn and move forward. People should learn from their mistakes. So TV planning for us began in some ways back in September of 2011 when I got there. So way back then, there was just the state director, the field director, me, and a press secretary, and then some regional field directors and all of our volunteers. And we began like really, really early planning stuff, most like kind of big picture numbers about like how many people we think we have to turn out, and sort of very broad stroke stuff. And like you just like make it more specific every single time. And the real big push for planning started in late July, early August. So we planned for GOTV for months and months and months. And I'm going to start with our GOTV operation and then talk planning occurred, like how we actually made that happen. So our GOTV took place over 4 days, called it the final Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and election. So in Virginia, we had probably around 40 to 45,000 volunteers active during those days, and they knocked on 1.7 to 1.8 million doors. It's a lot. There are 5.4 million voters in the state. behind probably, like 2.7 million doors, and we knocked 1.8.
Wow. Holy crap.
So we didn't knock on 1.8 unique doors, though. A lot of times we went back to the same door uh, for reasons which I'll get to. But nevertheless, we knocked on 1.8 million doors and made really basically an incalculable number of phone calls. We also had phone calls coming in from like other states, Maryland, D.C., California at one point, all calling into our state. So that's kind of insane. Those 45,000 people were based out of like 450 or so what we call staging locations. Those are like places where people can get what's called a canvas packet. That's sort of the key tool that we use for actually doing this work. And then all their like stuff that they need to go canvassing, to go knocking on doors. So like our literature and specifically our door hangers.
These are your like intrinsically motivated volunteers, correct?
Yes, these are all volunteers who are taking time out of their day to to work on behalf of the president and work for the campaign.
These are the people who Alicia and I talked about last week. We are not.
Sure. To give you an idea, like outside of the whole GOTV structure, how we actually got all these volunteers. Starting way back in 2011, we began building what are called neighborhood teams. Neighborhood teams are an organizational unit. They have a team leader and several core team members. So the team leader is someone who is willing to give up to like 20 hours of their week, organizing their team. The core team members give a similar amount of time, and they focus on either canvassing or phone banking or volunteer recruitment or voter registration. And then they, as a team, make phone calls to recruit volunteers to work with them to do whatever they're doing. So when we were doing voter registration, they were recruiting people to do voter registration. When we were doing our, summer voter contact, talking to voters, they were doing that. And then for turnout, they were recruiting them to do that. These teams organize in their communities, they're very local.
Right.
And one of the ways that we were able to actually make this happen is that we actually had 300 some organizers, paid staff across the state supporting all of these teams. So we also had about 70 offices. So these teams have a central location where they can go to and they can get stuff. And there's a person there who is their connection to the campaign, the organizer, who is giving them the lists that they need to call and practicing with them so that they get good at having conversations with voters. And they get good at asking people to be volunteers, and that's how we were able to recruit all these volunteers. Is we had this very decentralized network that is just pulling people in all the time to help. There's lots of things to help. The press effort brings volunteers in. We have all this constituency stuff that I won't get into that brings volunteers in. Whenever the president comes or the first lady and they have a big event, for sure, we're signing people up at those and then plugging them into their teams so that what we found in 2008 was that people who volunteered on a team, and specifically a team that had an office location that they could go to, but that wasn't necessarily where they worked, they were way, way, way more efficient than volunteers who just kind of came into offices and phone banked or whatever, came into a central location. And that sort of made sense to us because it's you're forming personal relationships with people you your neighbors, and these teams.
I think team is the right word.
Exactly. A lot of these teams persisted from 2008, so we had an advantage years in the in the making. Some of these teams have been organizing in these communities for 5 years now.
Do you think in most cases an incumbent president has had an advantage for that reason, or is that more of a recent thing?
No, I don't think so. So what's unique about the Obama campaign structure is that it has this sort of organizing as a core value.
Yeah, that's the thing that I've noticed.
Yeah.
They
So
do a
like,
good job of promoting that aspect of themselves
yeah,
in
that's
a very positive way.
yeah. I mean, and it's like to take this way back. Um, so like the branding of the campaign, like the external branding in '08, it was like, hope and change. In 2010 or in 2012, it was like forward. We also have like kind of internal branding, sort of our core values that our campaign structure has. In 2008, it was respect, empower, include.
Okay.
And in 2012, we just updated it to be respect, empower, include, win. Um,
Just to be clear.
to be clear, we want to do all those things, and we also want to win. And it's hard. It's hard for anyone and any organization to always live up to your values all the time, right? No one's perfect.
Yeah.
I think that we as an organization really strive to live up to respecting people, empowering them, and including them. And I think you can see that at like the teams. We delegated a lot of big responsibility to organizers and to teams for executing our voter contact program, the thing that we needed to do that we thought we'd need to win. Like, I was not in charge of that. Ashley, our field director, I mean, we were ultimately in charge of it in Richmond, but we're just like sitting in headquarters behind computers and on conference calls. And it's like these, 55-year-old, women in their communities who are team leaders, or these, students on campuses who are organizing their teams. They kind of took the responsibility on their own to, you know, get trained by us, get the resources from us, and then, go out and like do the work that had to be done. Which is why we were able to knock on 1.8 million doors. Like if we had, I don't know how many people we would have had to pay. I don't think there was enough people in Virginia or even nearby and enough money for us to pay people to knock on that many doors.
No
Like I just
way.
don't, right? No way. We had to like tap into these communities and get people to engage with their neighbors, and there's tactics here, but there's also values.
Yeah,
Which
that is a positive thing to be accomplishing for that end.
right.
Like you want the political process to kind of form these kind of relationships because of the good that they will accomplish.
Yeah,
Not just necessarily getting an election, you know. Like it means more than that.
right. I mean, we have these phases of the campaign, and it looks kind of branding-ish if you look at it. It's in all of our volunteer materials. This is no secret that I'm divulging. By the way, I'm not gonna divulge any like really specific like stuff right now because
So does the president have any birthmarks?
no comment. Uh, our phases of the campaign start out, there's, I think it's like, voter registration and engagement is the first phase. So like registering voters and getting the campaign off the ground. Then the second is like persuasion and organization building. So that's when we're like trying to persuade voters to vote for the president and building out our organization to be really big. The third is turnout and election day, like what we're trying to do to win. But then there was a fourth phase that we're cognizant of, and that's strong communities.
Mm-hmm.
And stronger communities because the president's the president, but stronger communities because people have learned things. So like people are these organizing tactics, they're not like complex. It's like having a personal story that you can relate to other people, and like learning to listen and like relate to people and talk about values and talk about the country that you live in and that you love. And using that to like organize a community. That's you can take that with you into many other places and use that really, really successfully. Shawn, I know, has watched the video of the president talking to his staff, where he gets a little teary-eyed, where he talks about, I've been saying this for a while. Like I am really excited to see what some of the organizers and some of the really talented people in this campaign to do. I think that there's going to be like big innovation potentially at like PS,
Yeah.
I don't know, the healthcare sector or something. Anyway, I've strayed far from where I started, but I'm glad we talked about all this stuff because it's important. So that was our big GOTV operation. This big, huge GOTV operation. Some of the some of the things that like we thought about in planning was how the packets would actually look, and we spent probably 3 weeks, a group of maybe like five of us, painstakingly deciding like where someone's name would show up on the packet and like what you would mark to denote that that person wasn't home. And all of our packets had spaces to take them out a couple times. So like how to format those columns so that it's as efficient as possible, so that it prints as many as possible, and that when someone's holding it, it makes sense to them, and there's no like friction to using it. Like that's the kind of level of detail that we that we got to.
I like how all of this design engineering stuff that we always talk about has come into play.
Yeah, I use that all the time in my work. Like one of the things that my department had to do a lot was technical documentation, because we are the data department in state is like we wear a lot of hats. We're the data department, which means we manage the data. We also do a lot of training with the help of a training department. And just sidebar for anyone who cares to hear about this, having a training department, having an actual set like core group of people whose only jobs were to listen to you, learn about the process that you set up, and then help you turn it into materials and trainings for people, and then execute those trainings was huge. It helped us in really big ways, and I would like totally recommend that for like small to mid-sized organizations to think about investing in just like people who are only trainers. It's fantastic. And I don't think we could have done what we were able to do without some of those people.
My company that I work for has an in-house training group.
It's important.
And I just work in the supermarket business.
Yeah. I mean, it's important in every field. But anyway, yeah, we do technical documentation, and we would spend a lot of time. Like I think my team thought I was sort of a jerk sometimes, but I would make them like iterate over and over and over, or on reports, specifically on reports, just like move this, put this there, put that there, so that it's really clear what you're seeing, so that people look at it and can like interpret it very quickly and make a decision. I'm sort of like famously known for not liking pie charts.
Why not?
Because, Shawn and dear listeners, because pie charts, when you're comparing two different things on a pie chart, you're actually comparing an angle, in 360 degrees.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's much harder to compare an angle to like an absolute difference. So the difference between like 20% and 40% represented on like a bar chart is really clear,
because it's double.
It's double, but double the angle it's different. It actually doesn't look like, to the human eye, it doesn't look like it's twice as much. So it's harder to get those relative differences. It's hard to like to like intuitively grasp those differences right away. So I don't like them, and I usually expunge them from any reporting that I have, come across my desk. I'm like, no, get.
There's that Verizon Wireless commercial where they talk about LTE coverage, and I'm pretty sure, even though he uses a bunch of different kinds of charts, I'm pretty sure they don't use a pie chart. And maybe that's why.
Maybe. I hate them. I don't hate them. I mean, I think they have their uses sometimes, but frequently not.
Usually comic uses.
Sure. Yeah. Where you're comparing, like, it's like this small thing, and this giant.
Yes, exactly.
The amount of time, things you do on the internet, it's like check
There's
email.
probably an XKCD for this.
Probably an XKCD for this. So like we spent all that time designing our walk packets. We 3 weeks designing those things. We like calendared out everything. And here's one big thing that I want to talk about, to tell you like the kind of insane level of organizational detail. And it's called the TikTok and reporting minutes. It's really important for us in what's called the boiler room. The boiler room is sort of like the central command of the campaign during GOTV, it's really important for us to know very accurately how many volunteers are out during any shift. We have like 4 shifts during the day when you could go out. How many volunteers are out? How many packets are out? How many packets do we have left? Like in every one of our areas. So we know, like, oh, do we need to reallocate resources from one area to another? Do we need to bring in out-of-state volunteers to make sure that all these packets go out? Because like all of our calculations are based on, if we knock on all of the doors in this packet, that should get us what we need. So we don't really care. We just care about like making sure that every single physical packet goes out. So to make sure that we have accurate reporting, we have this call down system where the staging location director sends out all their volunteers, and then at a specific minute, not like a roundabouts, but at a specific minute, their organizer calls them and gets their numbers. So you might be a staging location director, one of like 6 staging location directors for an organizer, and your reporting minute is 3. So at 10:13, 12:13, 2:13, and 4:13, you will get a call from your organizer. You have to pick up the phone and you have to tell them this many volunteers out, this many packets out, this many packets left. And that organizer has a reporting minute from their regional field director, and they get called and they have to report those numbers up. And then that regional field director has a reporting minute from their deputy field director in the boiler room, and they have to report all of their numbers up, like adding them all up. And then finally, the field director has an actual minute when she gets all of the reports from each of the DFDs, the deputy field directors. There's a lot of jargon in politics, I apologize. And finally reports them to the state director, and then she reports them to the national boiler room on a specific minute. So it's that precise. Like, it's like shooting a bullet with another bullet. You have to be on time and totally precise. And the way that we made sure that this happened is we had what are called dry runs. We actually practiced this 3 times before we even got to GOTV, where everyone had to be in their boiler rooms. Everyone had to be reporting on the reporting minutes, and if they weren't, we had debriefs with them, figured out like what went wrong. If people had to be replaced, we replaced them, and then by the time we get to GOTV, we're sure that that structure works. The TikTok is our key document for GOTV. Basically, every minute of every hour for all 4 days is like there's something happening and it's written down. Like, this is when this happens, this is when this happens. And then as you go through the day, you just cross them out. So on election day, we had 7 giant pieces of paper that had, so it was a 7 for election day. Our TikTok was 7 pages long, like in a Word document. A 7-page Word document. We had it blown up at Kinko's. We had it put up on our wall, and someone would just cross out as everything happened. So like literally everything was fine-tuned, practiced, like very, very, very precise. And I want to contrast that with things that people might have heard about the Romney campaign's effort and something called Orca. So Orca was their poll watching effort. Poll watching is the act of going into a polling location, sitting down. Authorized representatives of a party can go inside to polling locations in most places, and you can sit down and you can listen as people say their names to get their ballots, and then you look them up like on a little thing that has all the voters in that precinct, and then you cross them off as they vote. And the idea here is that you could then take that data back to some central location, enter it, and then as you're contacting voters, you remove those people who you know already voted so that you're more efficient. We didn't really do that because we didn't feel like the efficiency gain from striking those voters out would be commensurate to the logistical effort to actually get all that data in and like reprint everything. So we didn't do anything like that. The Romney campaign wanted to try and do that, and they deployed 30,000 volunteers across the country to gather this data and send it in through like a web application directly to like something like 800 volunteers sitting at computers in Boston. And they never practiced this. They rolled it out with just a couple webinars, and they had, like, to the best of my knowledge, they had no in-person training. Most people didn't get their stuff until like election day. And about the middle of the day, the system kind of crashed. So that right there is, you know, that was a failure of organization. They didn't put enough effort into making sure that that was foolproof, and not just the technology, but like all the processes. Like there was no like release valve for, you know, like what happens if something breaks. It's like, well, you call this person. You know, it's uh, they didn't have a really durable system. Uh, and you know, if it had worked, maybe they would have done better. I don't know. But you know what I know at least about the campaign in Virginia is if the Richmond boiler room had been like, you know, completely shut down for some reason, the entire rest of the organization would still have been able to function at 100%.
Yeah.
So that I think right there is, you know, that's how I see really well managed professional big national political campaigns. That's what you should be like striving for is durable, uh, bulletproof systems so that you can make happen what you want happen. And if you have to practice it, you practice it. If you have to spend a whole lot of time coming up with documentation, if you got to train people in person a lot, you should do that so that you don't have to worry on election day. And
I don't think they were worrying. I think it sounds like they just didn't apply the effort they needed, and they were like, "Yeah, it'll be fine."
So, you know, I don't know if things would have gone differently for them if that program had worked better. I think that for me, as someone who has executed like a couple of field programs, the idea of dedicating 30,000 people to just sitting all day listening to people and like writing their names down, basically, as opposed to actually having those people like knock on doors and trying people to go vote, that seems like a misguided use of resources, just generally.
Well, they saw all the stuff that Nate Silver was accomplishing by sitting in front of a computer, and they were like, "We can sit in front of computers, analyze data."
Yeah, so I think there might have been something of that there. For sure, though, our campaign, our level of analytics was heretofore never seen. And likely we'll see this level of deep analysis of data continue in political campaigns, but we knew a lot. We knew a hell of a lot about what was going on all the time.
Thanks, Patriot Act.
We didn't use any nefarious
spying on my shower cam again.
No, I mean, like, really, it's the reason why we were able to know so much is one, we had volunteers talking to people all the time, that. And two, we had a lot of money to spend on polling, and we talked to people in that way as well. And we had a lot of in-state polling, which was nice. And all of that polling allows you to make models. We had a model for everything. We had models coming out of like our models for, you know, how likely someone is to turn out, how likely someone is to support the president, to be persuadable. That's a crazy model. How likely you are to move toward the president after hearing after having a conversation with a volunteer about the campaign's core economic message. We had a model of that and used it, and it was pretty effective. So,
wow, it sucks that people are so predictable.
I mean, the persuadability thing is tough. Like, the turnout stuff is easier, and that's been studied for a long time. But that's because it's like, excuse me, like persuadability, like changing someone's mind, that's very difficult. Like, people's sentiments and perceptions.
Inception.
Right. That's hard. It's a lot easier to alter someone's behavior, and that sounds creepy, but that's just like the social psychology way of talking about it. Like getting someone to take an action is a lot easier than changing like their mind about something. So like getting someone to vote who wouldn't otherwise vote, that's that's not hard to do. You just have to have the right tactics. Like our door hangers. This is something that we've learned through randomized controlled experiments over the course of several years. Is the bigger a door hanger is, the more impactful it is.
Yeah.
So on average, not just like for a specific person, but like
I'm just picturing like a door hanger the size of a door.
Exactly. If you could have a door hanger the size of a door, it'd be hugely impactful. little dinky door hangers, not nearly as impactful as big door hangers. So our door hangers were really big. And then something really cool that we learned very recently, and we deployed out in the field, um, is while door hangers are really efficient, we found an even more efficient piece of literature for getting people to turn out. It's actually it's a little sticky. It looks like a FedEx like "Sorry we missed you" note. You just like peel like
All right, I got some of these.
it's pretty small. It's not huge
It's
like
yeah, it's exactly like that. It's kind of like a big post-it note.
and
Yeah, thanks for giving me that stuff to throw out.
welcome. Well, that wasn't me. That was someone. That was another state data director and field program, or another campaign entirely. That's one thing that's kind of nuts about campaign season is you kind of never know like who's doing what communication. Like there's a lot of communication happening to voters. But anyway, we found the stickies are really, really, really impactful, so we used those. And I actually didn't read any of the literature on it, so this is like totally my opinion. But the reason why door hangers work is they present like a physical barrier for you to entering your home. You have to like pick it up and take it off the handle before you can turn the handle. I mean, you don't have to. You could just turn the handle, but no one's going to do that. You're going to like, oh, I have to take this off.
Right.
And immediately stops whatever train of thought you were in the middle of, and you focus on the door hanger. The sticky is a similar thing, but it's playing off of this whole, oh, this is like, oh, it's like the FedEx note. I should read this. It's not even just I need to take it off my door. I need.
How many people are like, "Oh, I missed the delivery of my new iPad." Oh, it's Obama.
Right. Yeah, exactly, and then it tells you useful information about like voting. So yeah. But I mean, like all of the analytics, all of the stickies and door hangers, all of the like everything we do, none of it is as important. I mean, it's all very important, but it's all like in the service of making sure that our volunteers are talking to voters and having conversations about them about voting, basically. And we got really good at that. So that's what I did, and that's why I had to take some time off so I could make that happen in Virginia, or be a very small part of making that happen in Virginia.
Well, your state won, and as I understand it, President Obama is still our president. So, congratulations on a well-fought campaign.
Thank you, sir. Let's talk about horrible stuff now.
Okay, aliens and gore and
Yeah.
the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Institutions, mental institutions.
The things that you fought this battle for.
Right. So we're going to be doing American Horror Story on the podcast. We're already halfway through, though. So we're kind of like at the middle point. And by kind of, I mean we're at the middle point. Yeah, I think we're just going to like kind of chat a little bit about like what's going on. We're not going to recap anything because there's just way too much to recap.
Yeah. It's probably, 4 hours worth of footage at this point.
Yeah, so next week we'll probably do a more standard sort of like recap the episode, talk about it. But I just had some questions, and Shawn, you probably have some questions too. But a lot of these have to do with the two-parter that just came up, but they're all kind of connected. So my first question, do you think Charlotte really was Anne Frank?
Whew. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I definitely don't want to say no. The things that have happened in this season have made me believe that I guess anything can happen in this universe. The last season seemed like a ghost story. And
Right.
now it seems like it's just a supernatural story. And it could be like multiple universes. It could be aliens. It could be time travel. Like any one of those things could rear its head.
Or Anne Frank.
Yeah, so that doesn't really come as a surprise to me. It wouldn't come as a surprise to me if that were Anne Frank.
I I think it was Anne Frank. Reasons for that, but I also agree with your sort of assessment of the situation. It's like anything can happen. And that kind of sort of follow-up related question. So do you think the aliens are real?
Yes.
I
Yes, I do.
I think they're definitely real.
At the first appearance, and then for like a little while afterwards, I was skeptical. And then the doctor pulled the thing out of his neck, and then a whole bunch of other stuff happened that now I'm to the point that I think they are real.
I think that with the conclusion of the fifth episode, that second part of what is it specifically called? I Am Anne Frank,
Yeah.
where where Thredson has obviously turned Kit over.
By the way, Evan Peters, tremendous, right?
Pretty good.
I liked him in the first season. I love him now.
He's so different from Tate.
Which is exactly why I admire him even more, because now I see what a great actor he is.
Yeah, exactly. He comes off as a lot older than Tate, even though it's just like 9 months later for that actor.
Right.
Like, seemed like a 16, 17-year-old, and
You spend that much time in Jessica Lange's presence, and
it just, yeah, for sure. It's like she's like, he looks like, I don't know, mid-20s, 25, 26, 27 years old now. So good, yeah, good for him. But yeah, specifically by the end of this, where it became clear like Thredson was totally playing people. Well, we'll get to him. He was playing Kit. Is that his name? Am I getting that right? Kit.
yeah, Kit.
Kit. He was playing Kit, and something obviously has happened to Grace, and it, I think the aliens are definitely real. I don't know if they're I don't know if they're aliens, but I think whatever they are, they're real. Maybe they're like,
Yeah,
Nazis.
that's a good point. I think that whatever is happening is exactly as it appears. Whether or not it's like little green men, I don't know.
Right.
Maybe it's the FBI. Like, it's some kind of conspiracy.
Communism was a red herring all along. Okay. So in the realm of these types of questions, do you think Arden is Hans Gruber, noted terrorist from Die Hard?
Wait, what?
His name in Arden's, if he's a Nazi,
His Nazi name?
Frank says his Nazi name is Hans Gruber, which is also the name of, Alan in Die Hard.
I totally missed that somehow. I forgot.
There's so many Nazi-sounding names they could have picked. Why'd they go with Hans Gruber?
If you're asking if I think that he's actually a Nazi, yes.
Nazi paraphernalia in the bedroom. He just kind of looks a little Nazi-ish.
I love the way he looks for this show.
He looks bad, but in a good way.
Yeah.
He kind of looks like maybe he's been experimenting on himself a little. I don't know. He just looks like gross, like creepy old man, grossish, and he carries himself in such a. I think also like when they're around Arden, they also have a lot of like lower angles. He always looks really, really, really tall. And yeah, he's great. He is disgusting though.
He's very hard to figure out all of the aspects of whatever's going on there.
No, that's definitely true. So what do you think about his work? So my specific question is, what the hell are the creatures?
What are the creatures?
Yeah, what is he doing?
He's making some kind of super soldier thing.
Yeah, but they're like falling apart and all gross. Well, I guess the ones in the woods are not like.
No, they're obviously sustaining.
Well, he specifically told Sister Mary Eunice, who we'll also get to, who hasn't. He specifically told her, like, we just need to get them through the winter or something. I don't know what that means.
They're incubating. It's aliens.
Maybe they're aliens.
They're the aliens.
Maybe they're like baby aliens. Gestating aliens, or they'll become aliens. They didn't look like the aliens. The aliens look like aliens, but maybe they aren't, because I mean, like, there is a lot of uh, mind effery going on in this series, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, so maybe they're people made to kind of look like aliens, but they're not. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to go out there. We'll see what happens.
That's one of the aspects that they've been very shy on. They haven't really shown us what the creatures are or how they. I'm wondering if whatever's going on in the modern plot is not unrelated to the creatures and his experimentation.
You're wondering if it is, or if it's not related?
If it is.
I mean, well, yeah, I don't know. So the only thing we know about the modern plot's really weird, right?
They've also dropped it for the last 2 episodes.
They didn't have it at all in the Zen Frank episode. Well, I called this on the first episode on Twitter. This was obvious probably, but they're gonna have like a long story in the main 1960s plot, and then a very short story in the modern plot. It's gonna maybe 20 minutes have passed, 20 or 30 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like not a lot. So all we know is that those 2 lovebirds are in the asylum, which has long since been condemned. Adam Levine gets his arm ripped off by Bloodyface or whatever, and then they run around and they get killed by Bloodyface impersonators, but then there's a real Bloodyface. That's all we know. Or there's someone...
Or there's a second fake Bloodyface.
Someone there's a Bloodyface there who other Bloodyfaces weren't expecting.
Don't know about.
So time travel, is Thredson able to span the universe or something? I don't know. I don't know. So we had the reveal in this episode that Thredson is definitely Bloodyface, and boy, was that a great, him and Sarah Paulson. That was awesome.
They did a really good job of misdirecting me.
I thought for sure it was Arden.
It seemed like they really wanted us to think it was Arden, and I guess I just, based on that, I was expecting it not to be, but I still had no idea who it was. I had no real concrete guess, and if we had been having these conversations every week and you would have posited Thredson, I probably would have said no.
Right.
For a number of reasons.
So I kind of had the thought last episode that Bloodyface might be a lot of people, kind of like the Rubber Man, or if he's not a lot of people, he's like an organization. He's an institution, and Arden is playing a part in it, and I thought it was like Arden and the Monsignor were collaborating somehow. Because the Monsignor has all this political power, and he could totally make sure that things get hushed up and covered up. And Arden, I thought, was the brains behind the operation, and he was collecting people for his experiments. But then it's oh no,
I forgot that he's being covered up by the people in the church. So maybe it's some kind of super Catholic soldier.
Right? Maybe
super Vatican defenders.
Sure, maybe Thredson. I'd have to go back and look at Thredson's interaction. What a great name, Thredson. His interactions with Arden, but I wonder if maybe they have a previous connection. Maybe Thredson is a early prototype super soldier, something. I don't know. Just speculating wildly. But yeah, I loved that reveal with him and Sarah Paulson. Just he turns that light on, and you kind of see are those nipples on the shade, and then it's have some mints. It's I'm pretty sure that's a skull.
Yep, that was exactly. I said that out loud. I said that is a skull, and that was the moment that I was no.
And then she's back there in his little wood shed, and he's That's a sophisticated house. Reminded me a little of Girl with the Dragon
That is
Tattoo.
exactly what I thought of.
Uh, but like he's had to.
He's a very smart man.
I don't think he makes enough money to be able to have done that on his own.
Well, he's killing people. Maybe he's, finding ways to rip them off.
Sure. Maybe. I'm just wondering if he has. This is like a question that I have. One of my like I have like. Well, I just have the general question to put out there: is what if any connection does Thredson have to Briarcliff at all?
Okay.
So, is he connected to Arden? Is he connected to Monsignor? And if, or is he just totally peripheral? He just
this is one of those experiences, like kind of like in the last series of the show, where events happened that in a normal world, I don't think they would have been allowed to happen just based on like everyday bureaucracy. Like the fact that Thredson came in and essentially took over his own little part of the asylum.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened. It was like it's the you tweeted something about the show being a soap opera, and I think you're spot on. And I think that's one of the aspects of the soap opera-ness of it. Like these dramatic things happen that in the real world wouldn't have played out like that.
Right. Like how has no one noticed that Wendy the teacher has gone missing?
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. I mean, like and I think one of the big reasons is if people have noticed that she's gone missing, then maybe there's reason to suspect that Kit is not, he's not Bloodyface or he's not, responsible for those murders. So, no, I think that's exactly right. Thredson is very strange, and also, I mean, like I thought he was a totally good guy in his when he showed up in that in the second episode, and then right away I became suspicious of him when he was doing that like aversion therapy with Sarah Paulson. I was like, this is not right. Like making her watch,
pornographic images of women
while vomiting, and then getting a patient and having her like touch him.
By the way, that sequence was one of the greatest moments in this show so far, that felt like a truly horrific moment that is also probably historically accurate. Like not involved with supernatural at all. Like this is a horrible thing that we have done to each other in history.
Yeah, there's a very obvious, very strong gay marriage theme going on. What's Sarah Paulson's partner's name? Lois.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. But anyway, Sister Jude makes it really clear, like, well, you have no rights. It's like, well, she didn't have any rights.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that just struck me was when Sister Jude was saying, we're gonna have electroshock therapy for Sarah Paulson I think her name is Lana. And Zachary Quinto, instead of saying like that's barbaric, like you shouldn't try and make gay people not gay people, he's like, that's barbaric. The current best practice is aversion therapy. Still just, stuck in that mindset of it's still a disease. It's still
right. We still have to fix it.
Right. We just don't use electroshock therapy. That's barbaric. There are other little things like that that seem pretty unbelievable, like the whole forced sterilization, and Thredson's like, "You're not a doctor. You can't do that." And Sister Jude's just like, "Whatever."
Watch me.
You'd be able to get away with that. That doesn't seem right. What else? Well, my last specific question was, so Grace says that Alma's alive. She obviously saw Alma. Do you think that that's still really Alma, or is she like changed, or like
yeah, I had big questions about that too, because Kit's wife's body is found, correct? Wasn't it?
Well, it didn't have any skin or a head, right?
Okay, so a carcass was found that they pinned as his dead wife.
Correct, sir.
Okay. So I don't have a problem believing that it's Alma, but I would also be just as open to the possibility that it is, a projection of the person that they took up somehow. Like an
I think that's
Edgar suit. Edgar suit.
egg, some kind of egg soup, sugar and water. Yeah, I think that's right. She seemed pretty otherworldly to me. Um, okay, so here's my first big broad question: when is anyone gonna realize that Sister Mary Eunice is the devil?
The devil.
She's Satan.
That was the moment, like I was hesitant to start the series just because I was still mad about the whole abandoning the entire plot from the first one. And when I finally did start it, I was like, okay, not bad, not what I was expecting, but not bad. And then by the time that happened, the kid came in possessed, and then the demon jumped to Mary. That was when I was like, okay, I'm totally sold. I will watch this.
I will watch it just to see what happens with her.
That Clea Duvall, that actress, is phenomenal.
She is the what's her name of this miniseries, the maid from.
Oh, right.
She play she has that same kind of Virgin 4 kind of thing going on.
A Jacqueline Hyde.
Yeah, yeah, she's great. I mean, she obviously was connected to Arden and his experiments, but it started out as much more like fearful and like a power imbalance kind of thing there. And now that she's got the devil inside her, I I think the devil is really interested in these Nazi experiments for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I'm excited, but just like seriously, when is someone gonna notice that she's like got a demon inside of her?
I don't. If Arden didn't notice when she tried to do whatever, seduce him somehow,
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's gonna notice.
yeah, I don't know.
They're all too busy with their own crap.
Well, also speaking of Mary Eunice, I don't know if you've had this thought, but I have. I'm gonna put it on record. I'm just gonna put it out there. I would not at all be surprised if Sister Mary is the grown-up version of the little kid that Sister Jude hit with the car.
Did she not die? Do we not know?
We don't know. We don't know. We know that she got hit by a car, and that's it. There was no like, and then she died, or like there was a funeral, or there was whatever. We know she got hit by a car.
Yeah.
So, also, I think that Sister Jude, just like Jessica Lange, looks a lot like Sarah Paulson, like a
Mm-hmm.
old Paulson. I don't know if that was intentional in any way, but they look similar. I just put that out there. So, how about Jessica Lange? That's a question. It's a broad question.
Just like Evan Peters, her acting in this series has made me appreciate her first character even more because they're such incredibly different people, and I don't just mean accents.
Right.
She has a pretty
Right.
pronounced accent.
In both of these. Um, yeah, this is the Jessica Lange and Evan Peters show, really. And really the Jessica Lange show. She's just like she owns this. She's fantastic. I love her in this most recent episode, her little story um about the squirrel she took in. It's just like camera just slowly pans in and she just it's like it's all there. It's just like, oh man, she's good.
There were several moments in like the first two episodes, and I remember complaining to you about like editing and camera work and stuff. And I don't know what happened between the first two and the next couple, but they've started doing things incredibly different. This last episode, the fifth one, I'm Anne Frank, there were so many things. First of all, the entire opening scene was like a 3-minute steady cam shot that just kept wandering around this single room. And that was great. And then they did all of these things with widescreen or wide angle cameras later in different rooms of the asylum that I was finally satisfied with, like, this is the way it should look.
I think the whole series has settled a little bit.
They did that whole like actual soap opera cutaway with the Anne Frank home life story.
Yes, I tweeted about that. That it had a House of a Thousand Corpses feel to it.
Okay, yeah.
You know, the like cutaways to like kind of 16 millimeter.
Yeah, exactly.
I would not at all be surprised that they have had a couple of horror movie homages, not only in this season but the last one. So Sister Jude, she just quit like that. Just like took like
and just went back to, again, like, this is a heightened reality where the same day that you leave your job as the mother superior of the asylum, you go straight back to the club and go home with a man.
Yeah. So I guess I believe that happened, but I believe that it happened, but like what you're saying, it's fairly unbelievable to me.
Yeah, it's not like real life.
This is not real life. We are all David After Dentist in this series.
It's a little bit like I get feelings of David Lynch every so often.
You know that? Yeah, that's right. It is very surreal. Okay. Oh, I had another specific question about the episode. Grace. Did they put something in her? Did they take something out of her? What do you think happened to her? Did they impregnate her with an alien baby?
I think that's a good question.
That's my question is if they put something in or if they took something out.
I think put something in is better.
Yeah.
A better guess.
Yeah.
Because we were all expecting, what they were saying, sterilization of some type, but I don't think that's what happened.
Yeah.
Back to the incubating the creature theory.
Right. Maybe this will be Thredson 2.0. I don't know. I don't know why I'm stuck on this whole like Thredson thing. Just because Zachary Quinto, his turn from being so affable and like kind-hearted and just, Norman Bates couldn't hurt a fly to like, don't worry, she won't bite. I took out her teeth. That's like a huge turn. He's freaky.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't see it coming at all.
Didn't see it coming.
And now looking back on it, I can see that the entire thing was a guise to get Kit's confession.
He wanted to get Kit's confession, and he got a lady on the side.
Yeah.
And it's helpful that there's a lot of interlocking pieces here. It's really convenient that he took Lana because Sister Jude brought her in there under kind of suspect circumstances. Then her partner is now dead, and who is going to find Lana? Who's going to care to find Lana except for Kit?
And who's going to listen to him?
And he's crazy. He's been arrested because he confessed. Like, Thredson has like tied this up very neatly. So like we're right here at the middle, and I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen next. Like Grace is not in a really good spot. Arden is a Nazi on his his warpath, and maybe he will come to loggerheads with Thredson. Potentially, I don't know. Kit in jail. Shelley is a zombie monster with no legs.
Thredson has no reason to come back to the asylum right now.
No.
But Quinto is a cast member, so he's going to be in every episode.
Right. Well, I mean, like, Lana's got to try and escape, and he also alluded to other things going on there. I mean, like, I don't know if maybe he wasn't. Maybe this was simpler than I'm making it out to be. he wanted to keep Wendy around for their purposes, and he said, it's her therapy, which seems just like him being crazy.
Right.
But maybe there's something else going on there. I don't know.
He's actually a very dedicated psychotherapist.
Very, very. He's very interested in seeing her get comfort. So I'm really excited for where this is going to go, mostly because I have no idea where it's going to go.
Yeah, this season has remained fairly unpredictable, and it's not a bad thing. Aliens.
Aliens. Nazis and aliens. That sounds like a good movie. Nazis and aliens. I would watch that. I'm gonna Google that and see if it's a real movie right now.
It's Jon Favreau's follow-up to Cowboys.
Right. Nazis and aliens. Oh, this is just gonna give me conspiracy theories, though, isn't it? The Nazi UFO connection. Let's say movie. Space Nazis. 1964? Something? Oh no, sorry. This is just a Wikipedia page about space Nazis generally. Okay.